What is up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Movie Trade here on Vanguard Productions. We are very excited to be covering two new flicks for you. Today's movies, Beau Travail, hopefully that's right now, and Brigsby Bear. How do we feel, man? And how are you doing, Donovan, before we even get into it, brother?
Doing pretty well, man. Third episode of Movie Trade. We've had some interesting ones here. And I think this episode's
Yeah.
unique because this is the first one where there isn't really a connective theme between these movies. I know we said up front
Yeah.
that we didn't want the movies to always be kind of congruent with each other, but sometimes they will be. And of course, we did Song to Song and Sing Street, which had the musical theme, and then of course Watcher and Funny Games with the stalking, home invasion parallels to them. But now, yeah, like you said, Beau Travail and Brigsby Bear, which don't really have too much in common, really anything. I'm like trying
Really
to
anything.
connect
Yeah.
any two dots in my head, and there aren't any, which I think that'll make this
Yeah.
a good one.
Some good songs on each other's soundtrack are about the vaguest of similarities that that they share. Some good musical moments, but yeah, man. I think we decided we're gonna talk about Beau Travail first. This is Claire Denis' '99 film. This movie, I'd heard lots about it, and many people recommended it to me, knowing my personal tastes and what I enjoy to watch. And I love slow burn movies. That's totally my thing. And I will be completely honest with the audience. This is a movie that, for pretty much the whole first half of this movie, where I was not engaged with it. It was a very striking movie to look at. The sound design is great because of how minimal dialogue actually is. The sound design is actually such a vital part of the movie, and they do a great job with it, but it just doesn't feel like there's much there. And then the slow build to that final scene, I think, saved a lot of it for me. And I really did come around to it by the end, but I don't. There's still like this weird feeling I get where it's like I think this is a great film. I can acknowledge the fact that it's a great film. I love the ending so much. It's like one of now my all-time favorite movie endings. But yeah, just a very mixed bag of emotions, despite me overall feeling positive about it. How about you, my friend?
Yeah, so I believe I say it in last episode. Maybe I don't, but I actually had never heard of this movie, at least that I could recall. Maybe somebody's mentioned it in passing, but it's
Not
never
even
been
the ending.
recommended.
Not even the ending.
No, when you recommended it, I Googled. That was the first time I could remember that ever coming into my brain. And I was very interested to check it out because it's definitely not something I probably would have stumbled upon on my
Sure.
own. I can see, having watched it now, I can see why people would have recommended it to you, knowing you like Song to Song. Because I think if you like both of those movies, you'll like similar things about them. And if you
Yeah.
dislike them, you'll probably dislike similar things
Certainly.
about them.
Certainly.
I laugh just because I'm gonna have negatives that I brought up about Song to Song, and I'm gonna say
Yeah.
about Beau Travail. But yeah, it's an interesting one. Claire Denis is an auteur. She is one of the
Definitely.
greatest leading French filmmakers. She has put out some amazing work. This is definitely a movie. Definitely,
This is one of
definitely,
them.
yeah.
Perhaps.
And I think again, retreading arguments because I might have said this talking about Song to Song, where I'm watching it and I'm not enjoying large parts of it or for extended periods of time, and I'm just like, am I film illiterate? Like as I'm watching the movie, I'm like, am I just bad? Do I
This
not
movie
get
made
it?
me feel that way. Yeah.
Yeah, because this is it. Slow isn't really the word because it's not even like moving towards anything for the first like 35% of the movie.
You could argue that it's almost not, and that's kind of like the point of it, though.
Yeah,
By the end,
yeah. Mhm. And I'm just like watching it. I feel like I'm staring at the screen. I'm like a fly might come land on my eyeball and then fly away at this point. So I'm just not very moved by it. Obviously, it's very art house. It's brilliantly shot. I love that they're exploring East Africa. I think there's some interesting relations between France and Africa over the many
Yeah.
centuries of human history and whatnot. But yeah, it just a lot of it wasn't really clicking for me. It's a very quiet movie. Like I think the first spoken dialogue's at like 7.5 minutes into the runtime of the film. Obviously, that's including like logo, fanfare, and stuff. But yeah, and it also continues your what is now a trend of yours on this show of picking these art house films they could be summarized in 2 to 3 paragraphs.
Yeah. And somehow, like, I feel like this would be faster to explain even than Song to Song, despite that movie having
Mhm.
next to no dialogue either. And I think we're gonna spoil this whole movie. Obviously, we're gonna spoil Brigsby Bear. That's what we do here on this show. And
Yeah, diving all the way in.
yeah, we have to get into just the build up to the ending and what this movie really is. You know, this dude is, I think he's like one of the commanders of like this Legionnaire group essentially, and they're stationed out in East Africa, like you said. He looks up to his commander, worships him, you know, keeps his little bracelet on him and everything. And this new recruit comes. It's clear that his commander takes a liking for him, and it kind of starts this one-way feud, this extremely one-sided feud of just
Yeah.
jealousy and rage and power tripping. And
Mhm.
despite that, as we've said, it's an extremely quiet movie for what the themes of it are. It never really, even the crescendo of like their rivalry is in a moment. He slaps the commander slaps the Legionnaire, and then he punches him, and that's the extent of it. That's literally like the closure of their relationship, essentially their screen time together. And yeah, we get a lot of scenes of just repeated formations, drills. You know, I think
Mhm.
like a good 30 minutes of this movie are just devoted to just watching them do these drills over and over, and it kind of culminates in this one drill where they're like hugging each other and releasing and hugging each other and releasing. And it's like this whole
Mhm.
movie's kind of take on masculinity, our
Yeah.
inability to express these emotions really. And the movie kind of even plays with you a little bit. There was a point in the movie where I thought like, oh, these dudes are cool with him. They like this guy too. But as the movie goes on, you realize it's like they're all just falling into this machine. They're all one, and
Mhm.
it's that famous shot that's on the poster of him with the silhouette. You know, it's like you could interpret that the commander sees himself, but it's more so like they are all just kind of this blank face at a certain point. They all have the same haircuts. Most of them are like different from different nations and stuff like that too. And the commander even tells one of the legionnaires there, he's like, "You're not African anymore, dude. You're a legionnaire now." And it's like that's why you're here. And it's kind of like
Mhm.
this stripping away of identity that leads to that final scene, which I completely adore, where he loses his job. You know, he sends him out into the desert essentially to die, like with no way back, breaks his compass and everything. And as far as they know, he is dead. Obviously, we as the audience see later on, maybe that's a dream or maybe that's actual reality that he got picked up by those villagers and he was placed in the bus and he's okay. But as far as the military knows, he's dead. He's gone.
Yeah.
So the commander loses his role, loses his identity, essentially. And he like plans for his suicide. Like that's like the last thing we essentially see before those closing minutes is like him making his bed. He has the gun. We see his tattoo again.
Mhm.
And finally, after 85 minutes of just like nothing isn't the right word, but just quiet and repetition and this mundane atmosphere of just being stuck in this place,
Yeah.
he is just able to be free and release and like this last breath of life that he has before his possible probable suicide. And I thought that ending was just so impactful, and I did not expect it to be because of how little I felt for the majority of the
Yeah.
movie. And in spite of that,
Mhm.
that ending managed to do, I think, exactly what Claire Denis set out to do, is kind of illustrate this repression and that this freedom is just on the other side of the bend, you know, and that it was there this entire time. We see him in the dance club, and he's not really, you know, he has a girlfriend there and everything, and he's kind of just like shaking a little bit. But this last scene, I mean, full
The rhythm of the night,
inhibitions
man.
released, dude, man. He's just going for it. It's the rhythm of the night, baby. And what a better, there's no better song that totally could have encapsulated that scene. But I guess I'd love to know your thoughts as it went on, but also specifically about that final sequence.
Yeah, I mean that when the rhythm of the night needle drop, that got the biggest reaction out of the
Oh,
movie.
definitely.
That woke me right up. Which great. I mean, how could you not dance like that to that song?
Yeah,
Excellent
also
choice, I think,
true.
for this movie. And yeah, it is a very effective ending, and I think something this movie does really well is capture the like mundanity of like military life,
Yeah.
right? Where it is just like you're just going day to day doing the same shit over and over again. You see the repeated drills. I think they use editing really interestingly.
Ooh,
Like
yeah.
there's like one hard cut early in the movie. I think it's in the first half hour where we just cut to them doing like the crawling drills under the barbed wire,
Love
and you
that
just
scene.
see yeah, that just goes for like maybe 30 seconds, no dialogue other than like grunts and groans of just like dudes just like crawling
Yeah.
under
You
the
all
barbed
see them
wire.
crawling in like their different
Yeah,
formation and everything.
I thought it was
Yeah.
interesting that yeah, they're all doing it different. One's doing like a weird like side scoot.
That was a very engaging. See, that's the thing. Like this
Mhm.
movie has pockets of like that engagement where it's just like
Yeah,
the very fine details in this movie are so clear if you're
yeah.
locked in, but it's just hard to lock into this thing. I think is my main gripe with it.
Yeah, the distance between them is a bit rough, and I think also from an editing standpoint, this movie does a thing similar to a couple other movies we've talked about now in the show, where like it'll hold on a shot, and then it'll hold like maybe 5 more seconds than you expect it to,
Yeah,
or there just be like somebody's face after they finish talking, or like after a drill's been finished, where you like your brain watched hundreds of movies has told you like, all right, and next scene,
yeah,
and then there's like 4 more seconds, and then we cut, which I thought was interesting. Probably, I mean, it definitely is a technique I think to make you feel kind of more immersed, make you live in a scene. And
yeah.
I think it's very effective in that way. Um, and also the jump push-ups. I had to put that down on my note. The scene where they're doing the jumping push-ups. All I could think about watching that, I was like, dude, that is so hard to do.
Yeah.
That is not easy to do.
I mean,
One
also
time,
that whole scene is like when that full like power trip element is kind of like starting to like finally rear its head. Where like he's like telling them to do it, and then he just jumps in and like starts trying to do it too. And he's
mhm,
like, "I'm not an old man. I'm still one of you guys. I can do this as well." And it's like
mhm.
they're trying half as hard as he is. They're not even doing it right. Some of them, and he's like going into the paint for it. Very interesting character. I want to give this performer his full credit. Denis Lavant, man, phenomenal job, especially like I said in that final
Mhm.
scene. I think so much of that performance is just like a stoic nothing face and just words, you know what I mean? And a lot of the time it's his narration too, rather than actually conversations with him, like him us watching him actually interact with people. And to get that feeling from a performer out of that ending, I think is just marvelous and yeah, completely transcends the rest of the movie for sure.
And he does, like you mentioned, a lot of facial acting. It's a lot of
Yes.
expressions, a lot of furling of
A
the
lot of stares.
eyebrows,
Yeah.
stares, squints, all of them they're doing. Another scene that really stuck out to me that I want to mention is the helicopter crash scene,
Yeah.
which similar to the crawling drills, like the cut to it is very jarring.
Just
Where it's just
the
like,
explosion from the bottom of the screen, which is a really weird, like,
yeah,
visual thing too.
mhm. It's like before you even really know what's going on, you're already in it. You already see people getting dragged through the water.
Yeah.
Again, it's not really like a direct depiction of what a helicopter crash, how it would traditionally be shown in a film. That was very effective. And when I think of this movie and I like replay in my head, it's like that's one of the main major points that comes
Yeah.
up. I think that was really well done.
Yeah, that and the follow-up to that scene where the commander and the man he idolizes are, like, talking, and he's telling the young man, he's like, "Oh, he's a hero now, like, we gotta look up to this guy now," and you could just see the gears turning back in his mind, like, "Oh my goodness. I need to get rid of this dude. I need to figure out something," and it's almost as if, like, that last action that he takes with the guy in the hole, you know, the Legionnaire wants to give the homie some water, and the commander slaps it out of his hands. It's like it's almost as if he was just waiting for it, like this entire
Yeah.
time, just waiting for just one slip up of anything, just so he could exile him. Essentially, I mean,
Mhm.
that's basically what happens, and just how far one man's ego could go. And I think stories like that fascinate me, and it would intrigue me to rewatch this movie again. Um, but I honestly, I don't think I'd feel much different about the first half. I think I might like the movie more, but I
Yeah.
think a lot of it is because of that second half of it, you know, when we finally get into a little bit of what's making this guy tick and what he's really trying to do. And I do wish, though, we got a little bit more of the background of the Legionnaire. I understand that that is also purposeful due to the element of them all kind of sharing one identity by the end of this movie. But, you know, it's easy to feel bad for him given the situation, but I just wish there was just like a little more meat on the bones, because we almost get like tidbits of information about the other guys more than we do him. He's so quiet and reserved, and that's once again the point. But because of that, he's in the background more so in those shots that you mentioned, where it's like those lingering shots. Oftentimes, neither of the main characters are the focus of those shots some of the time. It's very intriguing.
Yeah, you mentioned wanting more meat on the bones when it comes to the Legionnaire character, and for me, that's just like the whole story. I just wish there was
Yeah,
more
yeah,
meat on the bones, and I think I'm just realizing about myself. I just lean very like narrative heavy, character heavy when it comes to movies,
yeah.
because we've pointed out like the biggest moments of this film, right? The helicopter crash, the dudes crawling under the barbed wire, the slap, the dance at the end. And these are like a handful of moments in an hour and a half film, which is short, but even still, it feels like there's like 25 minutes between every single one of those moments. Or I'm just
Yeah.
like, it's like finally some water, sir. Thank you. I'm so thirsty. And then I just gotta wait to get to the next point. Um, there were so many moments of this movie where I was bored out of my mind watching it. I was like, I
Mhm,
cannot
mhm.
believe this film is only an hour and a half because it feels like it's 2.5 hours watching it. I felt like half my day had went by the time that movie was over,
Yeah.
which does not speak well to pacing or structure and stuff. And it's all intentional. It's not like
That's
a
the hard
lack.
part, yeah.
Yeah, that's where I struggle, right? Because it's hard for me to criticize it that way because like Claire Tinney knows what she's doing.
And
She knows how to
it's working, like,
she knows how
it's
to make
doing
a film.
exactly what it
Yeah,
is. It's, like, frustrating you, you know what I mean? Like, being
yeah.
stuck in this place. Like,
Mhm.
it is
It's
agonizing.
yeah, it's exactly the goal, but it for me, that doesn't make me like the movie more. Like, I don't
Yeah,
walk out of it
exactly.
like, "Ooh, 5 stars." It's definitely, art house stuff. It's definitely something made by an auteur, somebody with a very clear vision, and I
Yeah.
respect and admire a lot of what's doing. I don't think it does much wrong. Like, filmmaking standpoint, this feels
Man,
like
I mean,
something.
yeah, honestly.
Yeah, it feels like something that I would have been assigned to watch in, like, my college intro to film class and then write a two-page essay
Mhm.
about. And I'm sure I would have said all the same stuff there.
Yeah.
But as far as like personal enjoyment, rewatch value, it's like it's not there for me all the way. But I can admire what's going on, even though it's
Yeah.
not entirely for me. I'd say.
It's definitely a movie that I think has its place in history for a reason. We haven't even touched on, like, the whole, like, very homoerotic angle of this whole movie and, like, that whole
Yeah.
tension and the
Mhm.
fact, this is a foreign film that came out in '99, very ahead of its time in a lot of ways, and I think
Yeah.
also
Yeah.
to be as bold to force you to sit with these men and have it be like a military movie and probably tricked a lot of people into watching this movie, not intentionally so, but I'm sure many people watched this, read the description of this, and anticipated a much more
Yeah.
exciting movie than what it actually is. I think that's a good thing. I think I despite how we maybe coming off right now, I do think that movies like this need to exist, and I'm glad that they exist. And this is someone's favorite movie, and I'm really happy for them.
Oh
It's
yeah.
probably changed a lot of people's lives. I mean, even looking at like letterbox reviews or hearing friends talk about it, I know a lot of folks love this one. And I do, like I said, I do really like it, but I can't get it to that love area for me.
And you're right to bring up the masculinity stuff. I think this movie says a lot of interesting things about masculinity, and specifically the military setting. Where I mean, I've never served in the army, but the perception and the idea is that like a military setting kind of breeds masculinity and kind of brings it out of people, and that's kind of where that environment. That's where like masculinity thrives, right? Is in a boot camp or a
Yeah,
military camp facility in the barracks, whatnot. That's where the manliest men are supposed to be, quote unquote. So yeah, for us to have the story that kind of questions like what
yeah,
masculinity looks like, and you're right, we have homoerotic themes, never really like overly pronounced, but it's always
yeah,
like between the lines there. And then again, 1999, right? We're like the way we as a society. I mean, I guess I can't speak for French society, at least American
sure,
society.
sure,
The
yeah,
way we viewed homosexuality in the 90s is
yeah.
worlds different than the way we do in
And even
2024.
masculinity in
Yeah.
itself is
Mhm.
completely evolved and changed. I think that's why this movie still has legs to be viewed now with a modern lens. I think it's a movie that'll probably continue to be examined and talked about as
Mhm.
time goes on, solely because of how well those themes are presented. And I think like movies have tried to do this exact thing. Like Jarhead, for example, obviously doesn't dive too deep into those themes, but this feeling of isolation and masculinity and kind of takes a different angle on it. Really respect the approach here, despite it not always being for me. I think it's a very elegant movie. And at one scene I want to mention, actually, that was just so visually striking. I
Okay.
took a picture of it. The salt flats when the Legionnaire has to like lay down in that whole like field of just like salts, man. And they find him out there. I was like, man, this is a great looking movie. Great
Yeah.
looking movie. And I wish that, like you said, the story and characters kept me as engaged, because if so, this would be an all-timer for me. You people know I like the vibe movies. This is most definitely like a vibey kind of movie. Sit down, you know, there's not a movie you probably watch with friends. This is like a solo watch, you know, with a bourbon or something, you know, just a relaxing, a mostly relaxing film. But yeah, to kind of sum up my thoughts, I did like it. Overall, I did like it. I would be curious to see how I'd feel on a rewatch. Like I said, I don't think much of my perception of that first half would change, because you and I have both indicated we know the purpose of it. We understand it. It is just not conducive to what makes an amazing movie for us, and that is okay. And I'm so happy for everyone that loves this movie more than both of us do. But I think I'm still safe to say, like, this is a very high 7, low 8 for me, and a lot of that is due to that central performance and those last 10-15 minutes just being remarkable. One of my favorite ending sequences leading into credits of any movie. So I have to commend Claire Denis for giving me that and for building a film around it that leads to that point. So it has an impact for a reason, you know.
Right. And for my concluding thoughts, at least on this movie, I'll say for me, it's like low 7, high 6 territory, probably. I still go thumbs up over thumbs down for
Thumbs up for
sure.
sure. Yeah.
Yeah. It would definitely get a recommend over a not recommend, but very small handful of people I would recommend the movie to. Very small handful of people.
Definitely.
But yeah, I think you've said it all, so no need for me to retread your closing points there, because I agree with most of it. But yeah.
Let me ask you this then.
Mhm.
Because this one neither of us had seen, obviously. Between the two atmosphere movies, for lack of a better genre label to kind of confine them to, which one did you enjoy watching more, Song to Song or this movie? The fans want to know.
Which did I enjoy more?
Yeah.
You know, I think I might have enjoyed this more, and this is gonna sound so like bottom tier movie criticism, but because it's shorter. I think I enjoyed this movie because it was shorter. Whereas song got a little torturous.
Yeah, as it went on. That's
As
fair.
it, you know,
This is a shorter movie. This is.
yeah, it's a bit more merciful in
No, yeah,
that regard. Whereas I
definitely.
did question if Song to Song was going to end at
Yeah,
one
when
point.
is this over? That's beyond fair. I cannot wait for our next one of these. I don't think it's not going to be this next pick. It probably won't be the one after that, but I can't wait for the next one of these vibey movies that we have to make us sit through. Very much so looking forward to it. But now we kind of have the complete antithesis to this, in terms of energy, at least. Brigsby Bear, dude, take it away, man.
Yeah, two movies that couldn't be more diametrically opposed, right? So 2017's Brigsby Bear, directed by Dave McCary, a movie that I watched about 3 years ago. Peak pandemic movie watching days where we were just marathoning them shits every day.
Yeah.
Many of which I hate to say I don't even remember very well, so I'm glad that I rewatched this. And I don't even know how we stumbled upon this movie, just looking for things that were available to rent for cheap. And essentially, for folks who haven't heard about it, it follows the story of this young man who grows up, spends his entire life watching this like children's television show. It's very much in the vein. The show's called Brigsby Bear, if the title didn't tell you that, but it's very much in the vein of like a Barney, Teletubbies kind of thing. And he essentially finds out that the show was fake. It was made by his parents, quote parents, who turned out to be kidnappers. They kidnapped him at birth as an infant and made this show to pretty much like groom him and mold every single like ideal and thought he has in his brain, using this fictional character in this program. And the movie just kind of follows him acclimating now to the real world as a 25-year-old adult, like just figuring out like how to interact with human beings pretty much. And I love this movie. I think it's a great time. I went into it with absolutely no expectations, at least the first time. Of course, this is a rewatch for me. I think it's just great. I think Kyle Mooney is so good.
Oh, he's so good in this movie. Yeah.
As James, the main character. You rewatch it, like some of the stuff he does and says in this movie, I'm like, dude. And he has a writing credit as well. I don't know how involved he was in that process, but he was definitely all over this thing creatively. I forgot that Mark Hamill is in this movie. He plays
as the abductor. The lead kidnapper.
The abductor father. I thought it was nuts, and I think just from like the opening, because the movie opens with like a Brigsby Bear episode. You watch some of it; they do a great job at capturing like early '90s children's programming.
Yeah, definitely.
Um, but like I think the stuff that like the bear says, where it's like always trust your familial unit, and he has a poster that says like curiosity is an unnatural emotion, and it's like although the
Yeah.
like the twist hasn't been revealed, like the needle or the shoe hasn't dropped, so to speak, like you're already getting these like weird vibes. You're like something is so wrong about whatever
Yeah.
else going on here, and I think it's so brilliant. And he goes on to like once he's out in the real world and he's been reunited with his birth family and they have all their awkward reunions, he goes on to make his own movie about this character Brigsby Bear. And I think that the movie has such an interesting message to say about like creativity and how like creating can help you process your own grief or trauma.
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
this dude who like he knows what happened to him. He's had multiple people tell him. He's seen it on the news, but he's still like calling the abductors his parents. He's still like, "Oh, my dad," and
For a
having to like correct
long
himself.
time. For a
Yeah,
long time in the
um,
movie. Yeah.
mhm. He still admires his character, like knowing now that it was just his abductor in a suit performing in a warehouse in the middle of nowhere. He's still like, "Oh, Brigsby Bear never gives up. He's blah blah blah." And I think making the movie helps him kind of come to terms with what happened to him and kind of form his own character and opinion. I thought it was
Yeah.
brilliant, but I'm more curious to hear what you thought of it as a first time watcher.
Yeah, well, unlike Sing Street, which I had heard lots about prior
Right.
to you recommending it, this was a movie that I had heard the title many a time. It's one of my
Mhm.
close friend Garrett. Shout out to the homie. He put me onto this movie. He told me about it many moons ago, and I just hadn't got around to seeing it. I knew nothing about this movie. I knew Mark Hamill and Greg Kinnear were in it. That was it. And I knew it was. I seen the Brigsby Bear thing before. I seen like the little poster of them like all taking the selfie with the thing. So I had no idea what the tone or what the story was, anything like that. Starting this movie, I was immediately very intrigued by it, and it has a very unique tone. And I give immense credit to any movie that can walk that fine line of
Sure.
just darkness and comedy this well. And this is like so thin. I mean, there are scenes in
Yeah.
this movie that are one line away from becoming a horror movie. You know what I mean? Um, but in saying that, it's also a very pleasant film. It's a very optimistic film. I think as someone that has had dreams of obviously like making movies and loving movies, that whole angle of it is so exciting to always watch. I think Kyle Mooney plays that role with such a just joyful glee to him, despite his previous circumstance. It's hard not to kind of root for him. A scene that made kind of like my heart drop was when the story kind of gets rolling. He's reunited with his birth family, and he's sitting in like the therapist's office, and she tells him, she's like, "Oh yeah, that show was like just created for you. It was like an audience of one. It was just you." And the dude that was in the Brigsby Bear costume was like your fake dad. And he pauses and he has this like look of like confusion and like a little bit of sadness, and then he gets excited and he's like, "Oh my god, he was the one that made Brigsby Bear. That's awesome." And it's
Yeah.
like, oh man, like, but like it is a very funny and charming movie, but it's also just very sad, like truly just
Yeah.
sad at points.
You really feel for him throughout this movie, and not just him,
Yeah,
but like his birth family, his birth parents. I feel so bad for them.
yeah, his parents, man.
Uh, and them trying to like connect with him or relate to him, and he just like could not care less about like he's still talking about like wanting to be with his old family, his abductors and whatnot. And I'm like, that has to be
Yeah,
like so emotionally twisting as a parent being reunited with your child. And there's a scene where the dad kind of snaps and he's like, they stole you, like they took you from us, like they aren't your parents.
yeah,
Because he still has that reverence for them, which has to be rough. And I'm glad you brought up the dark comedy and just terror that just kind of goes back and forth between. And in that same therapist scene, or maybe it's an earlier meeting, because they go back to that at least a few times in the movie, where he's kind of explaining that like he's not the only Brigsby Bear fan because there were other people that watched. Like he talked to them on the
yeah.
forum. He made
Oh, yeah, yeah, yeah. Oh my
he like
goodness.
made videos and stuff, and she's like, it was a closed network on that computer. So like whoever you talked to was presumably one of your parents.
Yeah,
And he's like, such a funny, darkly comedic line where he's like, so you tell me Brigsby Bear fan one, Brigsby boy two, Brigsby boy three, like they weren't really. It's like no. He's like, what about Brigsby girl? She's like no.
And then that becomes more horrific later when like he's interacting with Alexa Demi's character, and he's like, "Oh, I've never had a girlfriend before except online." And you realize it's like, dude, like his parents were like probably saying all this horrifying shit to him, and like, or his fake parents, his abductors. You know what I mean?
Yeah, well, see that the sexual angle of it's so interesting, right? Because I believe the exact line that Alexa Demi says, also a pre-Euphoria Alexa Demi,
Yeah,
which I thought was very
yeah.
interesting. The line she says to him specifically is like, "Have you ever been with a girl?" And he's like, "Yeah, online." And I think, like, as an audience, you're thinking like, "Oh, like phone sex or like cyber sex or some like
Yeah.
weird sexting messages." But in the very beginning of the movie, when he's first saved from his captors and taken to the police station, the detective asks him like, "Did they touch you?"
Oh
And he like
yes.
thinks about it, and he's like, "Yeah, like this." And he puts his hand out and he shakes his hand. He's like, "Oh," and they'd be like, "Oh, we're proud of you, son." Blah
They
blah
did
blah.
this every day.
He's like, "They did this every day."
They did this
So
every day.
I think that he's just like completely. I don't think they did anything sexual to him or
Yeah,
said
neither
anything
do
sexual
I.
to him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
neither do I.
I just think that he's so oblivious that
Yeah.
when people use these phrases to us that we know there's a sexual context to, like, been with a girl, did they touch you? He's just like he's taking them literally at face value what those words
Yeah.
mean, and it's like yeah, I have. That's very normal.
Yeah.
Which again, he plays the fish out of water so well in a way that's like always funny, but then just constantly sad, man.
Yeah. And this is like such a like I mean a testament to the writing because this is a character that could easily be like the most frustrating, insufferable, uncomfy
Yeah,
character to watch. Like if in someone else's hands, like this character is like a walking red. I mean, in a lot of ways, he is a walking red flag, but we like him. But you know, in a different movie, he'd be one that you'd want to stay away from. You know, especially. I mean, we've talked about Alexis Demi, like their whole dynamic and how they're introduced to each other is like they almost hook up, and he's like a grown man, and we never get her age, but it's clear like they're like in
yeah.
high school or like around that age, right?
Yeah, I think that's the implication because there's a scene
Yeah,
where it says there's straight up like you can't like hook up
you
with my
cannot do
friends
that. You're
like people
old.
my age.
Yeah,
And I was waiting, and it's very late in the movie where they confirm how old he is. They don't say how old
yeah,
James is
25.
until late in the movie. He finally says 25 years. That's like in the final half hour of the movie. So yeah, there's definitely a weird, and we're kind of
Yeah.
recontextualized some of those interactions from earlier on in the movie. And you talk about characters and character writing. Greg Kinnear as
Oh, dude,
Detective
I love
Vogel
Greg Kinnear in this movie,
in
dude.
this movie. Great performance. And of course, he's a detective on the case. He interacts with James a lot. They have a very heartfelt scene where they're speaking outside. Because obviously, the detective's trying to like get through to this dude. He's like, "You need to like stop. Like, this is like a criminal
Yeah.
investigation. We're trying to figure out what the hell's going on here." And then obviously, James, who was for all intents and purposes, a child in an adult's body,
Essentially, yeah.
when they're talking outside, and the whole time it's like Detective Vogel trying to get through to James, and then suddenly, like, I don't know when it happens, the tables completely flip, and
Yeah.
James is the one getting through to Detective Vogel, where Vogel like kind of slips and reveals that he used to like do theater when he was younger, and he liked
Mhm.
acting and performing, and he even like gets into like some of the Tempest. He starts performing, and
Yeah.
then he has to kind of like stop himself. He doesn't remember the lines, but there's a line James says to him where he's like, "I'm sorry you didn't get to do what was important to you." Because obviously he went into police work. He doesn't do theater anymore. Clearly has a passion for it. He's like
Yeah.
grinning ear to ear after talking about the Shakespearean plays he did in high school. And you see how that like hits Greg Kinnear's character. And it's like, damn. I was like, you are definitely the more emotionally intelligent and mature person in this conversation. But like he just hits you with like a haymaker. Like you have no
Yeah.
comeback to that because he's so right. Even in all his ignorance and obliviousness. And then that, of course, leads Detective will go down a bizarre path,
Yes, very
a
much
bizarre
so.
arc, where it's one of those like suspension of disbelief moments where I'm like, yes,
Oh,
that was an
entirely. I mean, the ending of this movie, I mean,
that's
he should probably be in jail or fired
I'm,
or something by that
I'm
point.
like
Yeah.
I'm like this dude should never work again in law enforcement.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I get that he just had this like emotional eureka moment, but when he just drives to the dude's house off work hours, like, here's all this evidence, here's all this
Yep.
police property. I'm watching him, I'm like,
I
okay.
mean,
And, like,
and breaks out of like the mental institution place that they put him into, and then he's like, "Well, I didn't hear you say that."
uh, yeah, he's like, "Are you gonna cut me from the movie?" No, I didn't hear anything. It's like, how long have you been a detective?
Yeah, man.
Uh, yeah, the Mark Hamill and Jane Addams keeping James in a bunker, telling him that the air was toxic and making the show. All that was more believable than
No,
some of the stuff they
definitely.
do with Detective Vogel. But I still think he's great in the movie. I love the
Yeah.
scenes where he's acting in the movie that James is making, because you can see the passion for it. I love when he's like, "Oh, can I do that scene again?"
Yeah.
Which is
I
like
mean, that last bit of it is so good.
such an actor thing, and even James directing is like, "Yeah, you could do it again."
Yeah.
I thought that was all well done.
Yeah, I like the scene that he has with James's real father too, when they're
Yeah,
outside and he's like, I'm trying to help him. And he's like, we are too, dude. Like, we're trying to make sure he's like normal, quote unquote, again. And it's like, you're not making it any better. And he's like, I'm sorry. I thought this was the right thing to do. It's like, this is just a hard situation. It's one of those
yeah.
reality moments in this movie that kind of just slows it down, but not in a negative sense, but just kind of like pumps the brakes. You're like, whoa, we're back in like this is a real character in a real
It
world,
grounds
you
it very
know?
quickly, which I
Yeah,
appreciate.
yeah,
There is like a logical character that steps in, is like, "What are you doing here?" Because we were kind of teetering on edge for me in that scene specifically.
yeah.
Um, I know we already talked about the hookup with Alexa Demi, but I do want to just shout out that whole party scene, which is
Oh
around
yeah,
like just around halfway through the movie. It's when he's reunited with his family, goes out to a party with his younger sister, and one, I love a good party scene needle drop in a movie. That'll always pull me in.
of course.
I think I Spy in this scene is so good. It just kind of just
Dated
plays
this
throughout the
movie
entire.
immediately.
Oh, it does. It, it does date this movie immediately. And I mean, 2017 was seven
Dude, we
years
still talking
ago.
about Kyle, bro.
Yeah,
You know
yeah,
what I mean?
Kyle.
No
But
offense,
it's like
sorry.
it dates it, but not in a terrible way. Because like he had a
No, it's
run, man.
fun.
Like
Yeah.
that. Like that's a little fun song. Not one that
No,
I've
yeah.
listened to in a long time. But here I was like, oh shit! I was like, we're back. Like it
No,
definitely
yeah, definitely.
that it immediately took me back to an era, and it fit, I think, really well in the scene, and also very wholesome watching him interact with all of like his sister's friends at the party, who all like know who he is because it's like a
He's
televised
like the stolen
case.
kid. Yeah.
Yeah, at this point, but also they're also like welcoming to him, which is very like wholesome. I thought like nobody was like, "The fuck's wrong with you, dude?" They're like, "Yeah, like this is like Star Trek, dude. Like it's this big thing that we love and all that," and just kind of like bringing him into their world as like just young kids partying, presumably high school age. Which I thought was very well.
Yeah, I don't know the actor's name, and I want to give him a shout out though. He plays Spencer in this movie.
I got it.
I'm normally not a fan of his. I want to be completely honest. And generally, when I see this gentleman in movies, I go, okay, this is like a very specific role that he is going to play. I really like him in this movie, and he is like just such a likable good dude. And I can understand now why he was placed into that archetype post this
Mhm.
movie for forever now. And that it's a shame because this is my favorite time that he's done it. And it was like probably one of the first times he did it,
Yeah.
but he did a great job.
His name, I hope I'm pronouncing this correctly, is George Lendeborg Jr.
Okay,
And you're
nice.
right, he is like such a great supporting
Great energy,
actor.
bro, in this
And
movie. Yeah.
he just has this lane. And when I saw him in this movie, I know his name because I had to look him up. Because when he popped up, I was like, I love this dude and everything I see him in. It's always something small as far as his role. But I
Yeah.
want to shout out a couple of the movies I love him in. Bumblebee. He's great in Bumblebee. Same exact character, pretty much,
Bumblebee.
that he's
Yeah.
playing in Bumblebee. Love Simon. One of my favorite
I was gonna
movies of
say
the
that's the
last
other movie
decade.
I really like
Yeah,
him in is Love, Simon. Yeah.
so good in Love Simon. Is even Spider-Man Homecoming. Like he's just in all
Oh
these.
yes.
Yeah,
He's like on the news. Yeah. Okay.
yes, yeah, he's one of the reporter kids, and he just has this lane, or he plays that same kind of character. I know, I assume actors don't like getting typecast. I mean, I know it's good to work, but he does always
Yeah.
play the same character. But damn it, he's great in it. If I was making a
He's great.
movie and I had this character on the page, I'm calling him first.
Hit him up, man. Yep,
Yeah,
George.
yeah, he's excellent in this movie though, and I think he has a hilarious moment when they're filming the explosion, but
Yeah.
he doesn't even know that there's going to be an
It
explosion.
went in my car. I drove around with that all day.
Yeah, it just blows up, and it's so jarring the way they do it. It's very well executed, and yeah, just the juxtaposition of their reactions. Where James is like, "Oh man, that looks so good." He's like, "Yeah, I thought it would look better than animating it." And he's like, "He's driving around with explosives in my car."
They get in the car. He's
Um,
like, we'll probably animate it on the next time we
yeah,
have to do an explosion.
yeah. It's like I think if we do this again, we'll probably just animate it.
Yeah.
It's hilarious.
I,
But
I think I think the one thing I want to ask you about, and it's literally like one of it's not I don't even want to call it a flaw. It's just
mhm,
something that didn't sit well with me when the movie ended, and then I thought about the movie again. And
mhm.
it's funny because as we're talking about the movie now, I'm realizing how much I really enjoyed this, and it was so engaging and so fun and so lovely. But the one thing that hasn't sat well with me about this entire thing is that scene where he goes back to see Mark Hamill in the jail. Okay.
Yeah.
And he gets him to record the audio for the movie, which is the finale of the film, where they show, the finished Brigsby Bear movie. Listen, I understand. I understand why in his mind he would be compelled to do that. But the fact that everybody is just like, yeah, at the end, hearing like this dude, that this guy took your son. He took your son. How are you gonna tell me that this is okay?
Yeah. No, you're 100% right. And again, I had already seen this movie, but even rewatching it, and when they get to that scene, I'm like,
I could not believe it played that way. Like after the whole thing, I just could not believe. I couldn't believe it played that way, and I couldn't believe that the actual when they showed the movie, like it actually went through. Like I thought that someone would do something, or like it would be the dad or something, or like no.
I was waiting for them to at least cut to somebody's facial like reaction in the audience when he speaks and be like,
"Oh,
what the fuck?" Yeah,
which would have completely saved that moment for me too. Just some acknowledgement of the strangeness of that.
And I hate to throw assumptions on a production, but it definitely feels like one of those we have Mark Hamill moments. Like we can get Mark Hamill in another scene of the movie because he's definitely like the top billed star in this, although he plays a very minor role only in the beginning and end.
Yeah,
but yeah, and I'm like, I could have understood if he wanted to go to like maybe the sentencing, right? Maybe for closure, he's in the audience when they get like sentenced to whatever it is.
Yeah, I even understand him like going to see him and to talk to him. I understand too. Yeah,
because he doesn't really get to have a final conversation with them because they get arrested abruptly in the beginning of the movie. So yeah, if he had even just been there and been like, "Let's talk about what you did. I appreciate this, and good riddance," I would have gotten that. But yeah, when he pulls out things like, "Let's record some lines for me,"
yeah.
And on one hand, like taking myself out of the movie, I think it's fun that this is like maybe the only role Mark Hamill's ever had that lets him flex his live action acting and voice acting chops simultaneously. Like just as a Mark Hamill fan, I was like, oh, that's kind of cool because obviously
Mark Hamill. He's great in this too.
Yeah, incredible voice. Seeing him do like the Brigsby Bear voice, but like not on an animated screen, I thought was kind of cool. But yeah, as a story, I'm like, who let him do this? I'm like, it doesn't fit. And you're right. At the end, every character's just like,
who cares?
Whatever makes you happy, kid.
I mean, even the dad drops him off to the jail to see him and is like, hey, do you need me to go in there with you? And so he's fully aware of what's going on because he walks out with like the script and everything, He gives it to Mark Hamill, and just the way they play that scene too it's not like they're trying to redeem Mark Hamill's character, but it definitely feels like they're very much so trying to lessen the blow so they could have this ending. And I don't know what the purpose of that is,
Yeah. I agree, and I think that the abductors are so much more like creepy the less you know about them and the less you see of them.
Yeah,
like I think when the therapist describes like, they caught them because like somebody just saw your abductor fake dad go into a warehouse 30 miles from where he was keeping you. I was like, oh, I was like just and I was like, that is kind of creepy, and like seeing him with the gas mask on. Getting out or going to the car, like which he wore just because he knew that his son watched him walk outside and he told him the air was toxic. Like I think those small details really like vilify them and demonize them in a like creepy way. And it's that movie towing the line. But then at the end you go back to him and he's like, you're treating him like a mean stepdad or something. I'm like,
I'm sorry what I did. Yeah, it's like, I mean, I obviously it's heavily implied that he's going to jail for forever after this, but it's like it's still just such a strange feeling because like you said, throughout the movie we're getting more and more information about what actually happened and how it happened, and when we get to that point, it's like I never want movies to like put a judgment on people. That's why I love Song to Song. It's a movie that doesn't really say anything about these people in terms of they're good or bad. It just lets them exist. And this movie is like saying Mark Hamill is bad. It's telling you that the whole movie, and yet he's still getting this moment at the end is kind of the problem with it from him.
You're right. There are multiple times where the movie stops and characters say objectively, like, "Hey, these people are evil. They did a really messed up thing."
Yes,
but it does feel like they're trying to redeem him. And to that point, in that scene, Mark Hamill's character even says, "Like, I still think of the day that she brought you home."
Yeah,
but then he says very very telling line, "It was her idea. Like, it wasn't really my idea," which makes me wonder, like, was the wife just like a nurse who just had this plan in her brain that was like
that we get nothing more of her after the beginning of the movie. She never comes back again.
No, Yeah, that's it. But I think my headcanon kind of just became like she was this nurse that, or this hospital employee that hatched this plan to steal this newborn. I don't know, maybe she couldn't have children of her own, brought her home, and then Mark Hamill as
Yeah.
the husband was like, this is it. I get like just went along with it, and
Yeah.
then it spiraled out of control. But even I think with that headcanon, it doesn't fully absolve him
Yeah.
really at all.
See, I forgot that he said that he
Yeah.
wasn't actually the one that did it. I forgot that line. And that does also make me feel more confident in my souring of that scene, I think, and the
Yeah.
final finale of this movie. And it's
Mhm.
hard too because the actual finale of this movie, if you completely take that aspect of it out, is so joyful and so good and so real.
Yeah.
He's like in the bathroom throwing up, he's nervous, and then finally like the movie ends, everyone claps for him. It's like, man, like what a great scene. But then the problem was like the whole time watching that scene, it was just in the back of my mind that like his captor did the voices for this still, and everyone's like so hyped about this. I don't understand.
Think of it like this: it could have been worse, right? They could have brought Mark Hamill to the premiere. They could have cut to him in the back of the theater, like in handcuffs, with like a security guard next to him, like
That
watching the
almost would
movie
have
and
been
clapping.
funnier, dude. That I mean, like that would have at least been like funny, like that. Not like same whackness that this has, but at least it was funny. This had, I don't even know what they were going for, and it's like doesn't ruin the movie for me, but it's definitely one of the things I'm thinking about most now that it's over, and I wish I wasn't because the rest of this movie is so freaking good. It's like the
Oh,
opposite effect of Beau Travail, man. It's the exact opposite feeling I have.
that's 100% fair. And we didn't even talk about one character in this movie who's very briefly, because I said Mark Hamill's probably the top billed star in this. Andy Samberg's in
Andy
this movie.
Samberg, yeah.
He's in this movie for what has to be 5 minutes,
Which
screen
was so
time.
hilarious. I mean, on the DVD cover, he's like one of the faces on the thing, and then
Yeah,
he's not in the movie until literally like the last 10 minutes of it.
yeah. I was halfway through it, and I had pulled up like the IMDb cast at some points. I was looking for other actors, and I was like, oh, I don't remember Andy Samberg being in this movie. And then I'm like, well, when does he show up? Because I'm like 45 minutes in this movie.
Yeah.
But yeah, he's like just at the psych institute with him, and he says like 4 lines of dialogue, and he's the guy he tells he's gonna throw the TV through the window.
Yeah.
But yeah, such a random inclusion. I'm like, Andy Samberg, I assume just must have known one of the filmmakers.
No, it's a
Whatever.
Lonely Island production. I feel like that was like came up at the beginning, like a
Oh, it is,
Lonely
you're
Island
right. It is
classic
Lonely
or Lonely
Island.
Island production or something.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're right. I didn't even make that connection. Yeah, that's 100% it. Okay, yeah,
Mhm.
that makes more sense
Yeah.
then. I didn't, for some reason, didn't connect that. But yeah, just very random. But sure,
No,
why
another
not?
great little cameo appearance. And like,
Mhm.
dude, I mean, like, I know I just went on a freaking rant about that Mark Hamill scene, but don't get me wrong, guys. This movie was a good one. I really, really quite enjoyed this. As we wrap up
Mhm.
here, I mean, this is not as high on the level of a Sing Street, but this is a movie that I anticipate revisiting just because it's like a very easy, comforting movie to watch until that goddamn scene at the end. But other than that, great movie. As we talked about it, like I said, I started to realize how much I like this, and then I thought about that other scene. So I'm still somewhere around like an 8.25, 8.5, somewhere within that range. I think it's a really fun movie, great energy, great cast. Like I said, I love any movie that can toe the line of genres that well, and this one does it extremely well.
Yeah, there's nothing I love more than going into a movie with no or very little expectations and then coming out loving it or just really liking it. It's great. Doesn't happen often, but I love it when it does. And again, maybe just the circumstance that I found this with a bunch of friends, watched it like over Discord during the pandemic, just as something to have on. And we all at the end were like, why was that so good? Because we all walked away like, man, we like really, that movie stuck. We talked about it like weeks later. So yeah, it was fun to revisit. Definitely a couple gripes with it. I think this is a damn good movie. I love it. It's got a lot of what I like about storytelling. So for me, it is a strong high 8. High 8, maybe depending on when I watch it, could be low 9 territory for me.
Yeah. Did you say that this was like an all timer for you or one of them?
No, I wouldn't say all timer. It's like it's one of those I bring up whenever people are like movies that people haven't heard of, or or like underrated movies, stuff like that. It's like it's in that conversation for me, right? When I'm bringing up
Definitely.
movies of the last decade that people don't talk about or that people need to see. It's a recommendation I commonly give out to
That's a
people when
good
they say,
one.
"Oh, I've never
Yeah.
heard of that." Yeah, all timer might be extreme territory for me. Like you mentioned, Sing
Sure.
Street, where I'm like, that's a movie where I watch it. I'm like, that movie might have changed my life in ways. So
Yeah.
I can't. I don't put Brigsby Bear that high up on a pedestal, but it is definitely in my very good graces. So
Yeah. Fun movie, man. Fun movie. And without further ado, now that we've wrapped up these two, it's time to pick our next two films. Please, dude, recommend what's the next pick for you, man?
Right. You're ready. Your next movie for Movie Trade is going to be 1992's The Player.
Oh.
Yes, starring Tim
Okay.
Robbins,
Okay.
directed by Robert Altman. It's a movie that was recommended to me a couple of years ago at this point. It's been sitting on my letterboxd for at least a couple of years, and I've meant to get to it. I at this point forget who recommended it to me or why. I must have said I like something similar,
Hmm.
but Tim Robbins is great. Uh,
Yeah.
I think that the story sounds interesting. I've never seen this movie. I told you before we started rolling that this will be my first recommendation on this show for a movie I haven't seen. So far, I've picked like my darlings, but I
Yeah.
want to kind of jump outside the box and walk into something that I don't really have already formed opinions on. So
Yeah, that's exciting, man. I'm excited. That's one that's been on my watch list for an eternity as well. And you know what's funny is originally, we talked about what we didn't say each other's movies, but we talked like what our picks were, and we kind of we're figuring them out and whatnot. It's funny because right when we started doing this segment, right now when we're saying our picks, I remembered that I told you a couple weeks ago that I already had a pick for the next episode.
oh,
So I'm not gonna go with whatever we talked about before this recording. I'm gonna go with what
okay.
I brought up post Christmas because I
Ooh,
saw a clip of
okay.
this during Christmas and I was like, I want to talk
Yeah.
about this movie. I need to talk about this movie. This is the movie that everyone's been talking about. It's Crash 2004, baby. Let's go. Let's go. It's time. I've never seen it in full. I saw a clip of it on Christmas, and it changed my perspective on race entirely. And I can't wait to dive into it with all
Oh,
of you.
well, I bet it did. I bet it did change your perspective on race. We might have to have a sit down conversation. Oh
Yeah,
man.
it's clear why I'm recommending this. Obviously, this is a movie that has just had such. I mean, it's funny, Donovan, because even when I go on Letterboxd now, I see people actually really do like this movie. Like today in our today time, people genuinely like this movie, and I've heard this is the worst Oscar movie. Let's find out. Let's find out as a team together.
In this real world that we live in, yeah, Crash is definitely up there in combo like Green Book and whatnot. So for full transparency, right, just to kind of drive home why my reaction was so extreme there, before we went on, just to make sure that we don't accidentally pick the same movie, we were comparing release years, and you had said your movie was a 2007 film, and I believe I correctly deduced that it was probably going to be No Country for Old Men, which
It
is a
was going to
movie
be.
that
Yes.
it's a movie that we've discussed. Neither of us have seen. It's like a
Yeah.
glaring blind spot in both of our filmographies. So we'll probably watch it in a future episode for the show,
Definitely.
not the next one. So yeah, to go from No Country for Old Men to Crash, woof, that was a total whiplash if I've ever
Yeah.
experienced one.
I think I genuinely think this might be the funniest episode that we record to date.
It might be. It might be, dude. It'll probably rival Woodsboro retrospective for Scream 3, I think,
Yeah,
for the funniest, because
that was hilarious.
that was also very funny video we made. But
Yeah.
yeah, I watched Crash in college. I talk about having to watch movies for school. I had to watch that movie and write an essay about
That's
it
crazy.
in college. And I remember watching that movie, and we were in that class like, what the fuck was that film?
I mean, for full transparency, the only clip of it I saw during Christmas that made me want to watch it. So I still know like next to nothing about this movie except the posters and this scene that I'm about to talk about. Sandra Bullock is like on the phone with someone, right? And she's talking, and then all of a sudden she goes, "Whoa!" And it like slow motion, but not good slow motion. Like the frames just drop, and then you see her phone like hit the ground, her shoe falls off, and you just see her laying there at the bottom of the staircase. And I was like, "This is the movie now for Movie Trade."
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Excellent.
Boy, that'll be a fun one.
I
You know
can't
what?
wait.
It'll be a time. That'll be a time. I was gonna get into some stuff, but I was like, I'll just say it for the episode.
No, we have
I
to
was
save
like,
it. We have to save it, bro.
Yeah.
We have to save it. We have to leave them wanting more, back ready to talk about Crash and The Player 2 weeks from now on Movie Trade. We love you guys. This is Donovan Michael saying peace. We will see you on the next one. Bye-bye.